Okay, welcome back. If everyone just wants to sort of filter in here and take a seat. Okay, that was easy. Okay, well, welcome. My name is Claire Atwell. I'm one of the Agile coaches with systems delivery here at Booz Allen. So how did we get here? How do we even need to align Agile teams? How many people here actually work on a team where you're an independent team and you don't need to coordinate with anyone? Okay, yes, I see none. So success breeds success. So just because you're an Agile team doesn't mean you don't need to align with anyone else, whether they're, in some other cadence or synchronization. So we're going to talk specifically about Agile team to Agile team, but a lot of these techniques you can use Agile team to non-Agile team, Agile team to service team, etc. So scaling. How do we get to scaling? Sometimes what happens is we are an independent team. Things are going great, and we add another team on. So we come to this sort of scrum of scrum model. We think, so that's how we align. We have a scrum of scrum meeting. Sometimes what happens is we organically subdivide, and we find ourselves actually having skill sets or some other sort of software development language in common. People look at Spotify in that way often. Or we have highly complex systems and we want to be Agile. So we've been told, let's be Agile. And we start implementing something like SAFe. So there are many ways to get here. But it doesn't matter how we get to scaling. We still have people in our organization that we start identifying with roles. So first of all, I thought it was very clever when I first came up with this, but I started talking to the other Agile coaches. And this seems to be a trend. So the first thing, we have all these teams. So what do? We need Scrum Masters, right? If we have Agile teams, we need Scrum Masters. Where do we get Scrum Masters from? So oftentimes say, oh, there's someone who's a certified Scrum Master. So excellent. We have 5 teams. Let's hire 5 certified Scrum Masters. Or we have project managers who already understand the organization. So we say, great. They'd be great Scrum Masters, too. Or we have people who are subject matter experts. Excellent Scrum Masters. Or, hey, you know what? That guy is a great tech lead. Maybe he should be a Scrum Master. So we just start identifying people with those roles once we realize that we're scaling up our teams and we actually need some leadership. Product owners. Wow, we just realized we don't know what to build in this really large organization. So we start identifying people. So sometimes subject matter experts who have been here for a long time. Excellent, they can tell us what to build. Alternatively, we have, in our client space oftentimes, this is how we get buy-in and we get some sort of interaction with our clients as they become the product owners. Excellent, they're the people who actually have the authority to tell us how to proceed. Project managers, again, they keep popping up. Project managers, once again, seem like they would be great product owners. They can tell us what we need to build. And lastly, business analysts. So I think organically when you build these teams, you sort of see these folks falling into these roles. That's great. It's great that they have a role, they have the knowledge, they have the organizational knowledge, and that all contributes to a great organization. However, if you've been in any of these roles with more than one team, there are some things that we lack at the team level that organically we have to grow when we start scaling. So if we have more than about 2 or 3 teams, it gets really difficult to manage our dependencies among our teams. So what do? We have cross-team planning. So that's great. My team meets with your team, and we say, great, we're going to do this plan. Off we go, and we'll be sure to give you what you need by your date. In addition to that, especially with SAFe, we have additional intervals for reflection. So we have things like inspect and adapt every quarter. Things like that, to make sure that the organization is getting better in their processes. In addition to that, how do we actually hold each other accountable? Wow, that's social glue, isn't it? That's a little bit different than saying, let's have these meetings and get together. And then things get even more complicated. How do we start learning from each other? Learning across the teams. Once again, that's sort of a social contract with each other. How do we get to the point where we want to make the entire program better? And how do we get to the point where we can actually spread improvements? My team came up with a great innovation. We know how to start automating our testing. How do we spread that goodness to another team? So change isn't easy. So we've gotten to the point where we say, okay, we have some people in roles, and we have some goals. You know, we want to make sure that we're actually improving the goodness across the program, making everyone agile as possible. So one of the examples I've seen of how do we spread the goodness is communities of practice. Truthfully, I don't feel like that's enough. Communities of practice are often seen as things that are optional and boring. they really focus on skills, not necessarily how to put that social glue together. So we talk about all of these teams. Surprisingly, we've had the tools all along in our scaled organizations. We have these great Agile teams who actually know how to commit to each other to actually deliver some valuable software at regular intervals. So what should we do? They have the social glue. So what have we done? We started treating Scrum Masters across the organization as their own team. How do they get to the point where they care about commitment to each other? I had a story that I've told before, so anyone who's heard this before, hold out until the punchline. But I was a Scrum Master on a large implementation at the Veterans Affairs, and I had been a Scrum Master of a team before, and I walked into my first Scrum of Scrum meeting, and I reported what my team is doing. I was very proud. We're doing great. We go to the next person, Olga. Olga says, Claire's team broke the build. And the first thing that I thought was, hey, if you had told me this 16 hours ago, we would have fixed it. Why are you waiting until the Scrum of Scrum meeting? Would an Agile team act like that? If I was actually at my stand-up with other developers, would they have waited that long to let me know that the build was broken? Probably not. We would just we'd get on Slack, hey, Luke, you broke the build. Can you fix it? Yes, I will. So once again, I started realizing we didn't have the same commitment to each other. It was team against team. And team against team isn't going to give you a large system. Team against team is going to optimize one team to make that a very cohesive team, but not give anything to the entire program. I'm a human, and I work with a lot of humans. So I usually take a human-centered approach to things. So I said, I'm going to go and talk to Olga and see what the deal is. I had never actually gone over to her Scrum area and just talked with her and gotten to know her. So I went over to Olga. I was pretty new on the program. I said, next time, can you just let me know, and I'll be happy to contact whoever needs to be contacted to fix the build. We don't need to have surprises in our Scrum of Scrum meeting. And when you think about how ineffective that makes a Scrum of Scrum meeting, where it's really just pointing fingers, rather than talking about what I learned and how I can help your team, that's where we need to get. We need to add ceremonies in addition to the ceremonies like a Scrum of Scrum meeting, but we need to add ceremonies so that we Scrum Masters have commitment to each other. Product owners. How do we have a cohesive product when we have one product owner per team and 10 teams? The product owners need to have that same commitment. What are they learning from each other? And sometimes, when we're treating people as an Agile team, you're sort of going through the motions at the beginning, but slowly we're forming that social glue so that we have that commitment to each other. We're getting that muscle memory. So add ceremonies. Commit to overall delivery. So once again, optimizing one team isn't going to optimize your entire system. So how do we get to the point where we're actually committing? Olga and I and all of the other Scrum Masters needed to commit to each other to this delivery. We were in a safe model. A release train engineer isn't going to get to the point where they're forming the social glue. The Scrum Masters need to form the social glue with themselves in addition to the product owners. They need to form their social glue. So what do? We focus on team health. Are we as Scrum Masters committing together to the entire system? So how do you get there? How do we even start to form the social glue and norm and even get to the point where we can renorm? So I'm bringing in the Tuckman model. This is sort of a shortcut that you use with teams normally, just so an individual Agile team. So the Tuckman model, many of us are familiar with it, forming, storming, norming, and performing. So we, as a group of Scrum Masters or product owners, need to get to the point where we're getting past the storming. I don't need to walk into a Scrum of Scrum meeting and have Olga blaming my team. I want to get to the point where we're helping each other. So let's get to the point where we can skip a lot of the storming steps. That's where chartering comes in. And this can be used for individual teams. This can be used for any kind of team. But this is where your social glue starts. So how do we deal with conflict in a healthy way? That's where the chartering gives you that shortcut in the storming. And then how do we improve upon it? And how do we get to the point where we can add more Scrum Masters or product owners into our system, and immediately, once again, they might not even be people with any experience as a product owner or a Scrum Master, but how do we get to the point where they're excellent Scrum Masters and product owners because they have the community to help them learn and the support? So this is where we get into the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So if you want a quick step to chartering, I often point people to the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It gives you some good measures against your team to see if your team is a healthy team. So lack of trust, that's the very first thing. How do we build trust? How do we have healthy conflict? Artificial harmony is the very first sign that you do not have that trust. So once again, if you're in a Scrum of Scrum meeting or even your daily stand-up and no one says anything and they're afraid to challenge anything, your first clue there. Lack of commitment. We as Scrum Masters and product owners, we need to commit together to the entire system. We're not committing to making our own team better, we're committing to the entire system. Accountability. So once again, just because someone calls you out doesn't mean you don't feel like you're accountable towards it. I would be the person who steps forward first in that situation and say, we broke the build yesterday, we're working with Olga's team to make sure that it's actually integrating today. And lastly, we need to make sure that we care about the overall results. So sort of take each of these layers, look at them, and grade your team against that. So especially in a system where you might be dispersed and you might be individual Scrum Masters or product owners feeling responsible only for your one piece, think about how you feel about this against the entire system. So what's next? So I really only talked about product owners and Scrum Masters, and I really only talked about Agile teams. But you can use this really across any team where you have something in common and you need to make sure that everyone is committing to that delivery. So think about additional things you can do. We just talked a little bit about doing the chartering ceremony and norming and renorming, keeping your charter up to date. But think about other things you can do. Many other ceremonies. Maybe you have a separate daily stand-up for your Scrum Masters and product owners. It might not be the Scrum of Scrum meeting. Maybe it's for another purpose. When do you have your retrospectives? When do you actually review your work? When do you look at qualitative and quantitative results of your delivery? So form other teams within your program. And last, be vigilant, because it's really easy to, in a large system, it's really easy to be selfish and to start thinking about how is my team better. If you're in a large system, optimizing your team is not accomplishing anything in the larger system. So be vigilant and think about it in a systems perspective. How can we be better across the entire organization? So that's all I have for you. We have a couple of minutes for Q&A. Any questions or comments? Comments are welcome too. Sure. Yes.
I'm just hired, but I've been on Scrum teams completely separate from Booz Allen Hamilton for at least the last 5 years, and it seems as though it's against human nature, because what happens is the important people make all the decisions in secret meetings, and then the team shows up and we have to guess what they've decided, and it seems like that's human nature, because some people are naturally very leadership oriented and they don't want the introverted people on the team to be involved.
And that's a good point. I think one of the things that Agile ceremonies give you in terms of muscle memory, it gives you empathy towards introverts. And it's going to seem strange to you, but I have a lot of empathy towards introverts. And Agile really gives you, many Agile practices give you tools to bring people in. And so when you talk about people being leadership-oriented, I think we need to start redefining what leadership means. You know, how do you get the most out of everyone on your team so that they actually feel like they're high contributors to the team? How are they helping the whole? And giving them the transparency that they understand how they're contributing to the higher purpose. So I think we need to start talking about really what leadership is. That's the difference. Yes?
Have you been on, or are you aware of any large-scale projects where there are multiple Scrum teams, but one Scrum Master serving all the different teams? And if so, any kind of warnings, guidance, lessons learned from that?
Well, so the question is one Scrum Master for many teams. So the first thing is it would be really easy to align with yourself if you're the only Scrum Master, right? You have a lot of empathy for yourself. So that's a good question. How many teams can one Scrum Master take on? I think it depends on the maturity of the teams. So if the teams are already self-organizing and they feel like we break down the work, we can take turns facilitating. Really, at that point, it's just sort of gentle guidance rather than challenging them to make sure that they're actually including everyone and actually facilitating meetings and really making sure that you are mirroring what they should be doing. So yes, so it depends on the maturity of the team. It could work if the teams are highly mature and they're ready to go. But remember, Scrum Masters also are there to stretch teams. So if you're already stretched, you're probably not stretching the team and challenging them, in innovation or challenging them to actually be more cohesive. And then things sort of slowly fall apart because new members come to the team and what that core agility was slowly goes away if you don't have someone to bring you back to the center. So it could work, but I would say it probably isn't a very good long-term solution is how I would say it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, there was one more question.
Oh, okay, we can do one more question. I'm curious if you've ever had any experience with environments where some teams are aligned around products and other teams are aligned around capabilities, and how to get them to gel.
So sort of what you're thinking is, so I was on a program where we had basically a web services team, and then we had feature teams. Is that sort of what you're talking about, something around there? Or database team, we're the data team, we have our web services team, and then we have our feature team. So how do you get them to gel? Once again, there's social glue there and empathy, because usually what happens is it's easy to say, wow, those data folks, they're so slow. Why can't they ingest the data? Their data quality is awful. What are they doing? What's an easy or a good way that I've found to do it, and I'm doing it currently with one of my programs at the Army, is you sort of have an envoy on the team. So the data person, so you'll have a really good data guy who sits with the team and build empathy with the data folks. And don't send the person who's the most junior data guy who you don't care what he's doing. You want to have someone there who is actually answering real-time questions and building respect for each other. Wow, that data team must be really smart if Frank is here. And did you see how smart Frank is? He knows everything. So once again, sort of the envoy method. Having a really smart guy sitting there answering questions, or gal. In addition, making sure that there's a quick communication back to those teams. So that's what I would suggest, and it helps build the empathy, like I said. And in addition to that, it really helps build the communication, because you're not going to be putting down Frank's work because you know Frank. You know Frank is reliable and he's doing his best. So that's what I would suggest.
Now we'll say thank you.
Thanks. And next up we have NetDMR, automating a legacy application. So I'm going to put a little plug in for them, honestly. So I was the coach for this team, and I am so proud of how far they've come. And when we talk about a legacy system, this is not a sexy system at all. But they came up with a way to find automation, and I'll let you lead them on the journey, Abby. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Abigail Brown, and I am the delivery manager for the NetDMR e-reporting project. And I'm here today with 3 of my coworkers, Kosha Patel, Luke Turner, and Ashma Krishna, to talk about our work with automating some of the processes to support our legacy system. So what is NetDMR? NetDMR is a web application that enables users to record their discharge monitoring report data. So discharge monitoring reports, or DMRs. So what happens is when a company needs to discharge pollutants into the water as a byproduct of their business, they need a permit to do that. And that permit is going to specify that they need to monitor the quality of the water through sampling. And NetDMR is the tool that they use to record the results of that sampling. So NetDMR was built based on a Java prototype that was done by another contractor. When that prototype was built, it was handed to us by the client, and they said, just get this into production as soon as possible. And so we did that in 2009, and we've been enhancing it ever since. So during the last, ever since production, we went to production, we've been following a very standard waterfall approach to making these enhancements. We elicit requirements at the very beginning of the process, and then we go through several months of design, development, and test, and somewhere towards the end of that process, that's when the client finally gets to see demonstrations and see if we built what they wanted. And that's really not an ideal way to communicate with your client. So in the last couple years, we've started moving towards a much more agile approach with the goal of getting these demonstrations in front of the client much sooner and much more often. And as part of that, we have been looking for ways to automate our build and test processes to enable that. Luke?
So at fall 2015, I think it was, we were in the middle of a recompete, and one of the things that we knew needed to be part of the proposal was how are we going to improve our processes. We knew the client wanted to see Agile credentials, so how do we demonstrate that now to be able to include that in our proposal, which basically came down to PM says we need some sort of automation, but there's no budget for it. So how do we make that work? So we know that, in theory, automating things is going to save us time and money. We've got a little bit of downtime during this recompete. There's not as much work going on. So what we did was we were given some time. We don't have money, but we all know that actually time is money. So thankfully we were given some time to experiment with look at what's out there, research, experiment, look at what are our major time sinks versus what's the value we get out of that. And the things that we highlighted were testing. We have a separate test team that does really amazing job finding everything the developers have missed. And our builds, actually, we're taking a ridiculous amount of developer time away from actually producing features. Sorry, I lost my place in my notes. Yeah, so that was our basis. We had a little bit of automated testing, so we're going to look into that more. And Kosha will tell you about that.
Yeah, so the first thing we did was got all the test team members together, and we just spent literally a day just talking about automation, goals, what worked in the past, what didn't work, why, when we tried it in the past, why it didn't carry over. So pretty much after that day, I kind of compiled everything and then did what I usually do and go to Google and tried to look for things that were free because we didn't have any budget for any tools. So then we did come across this tool, this open source tool called Sahi, and we saw that it had a lot of the things that our testers had mentioned that they wanted in a tool. So once we had an idea of what tool we wanted to use, we kind of set these little goals. So like the first goal would just be get the tool up and running, get it working. And the goal after that would be, okay, once it's up and running, get something small to run, some small tests to run for our application. Once that was done, then we finally tried to automate our smoke test in full, because the test team had complained time and time again that these smoke tests were taking forever. It was a day process. Sometimes if the smoke test failed, we had to redo the smoke test. We'd have to push it to the next day. And so it was just becoming very costly, very repetitive, and our testers want to kind of move away from that. So that's what we ended up automating thereafter. So two things during this process, two takeaways that I had was that maintaining the scripts was not as difficult as we once thought it was, and that going a step at a time was very critical into actually getting this process to work. So Luke will talk about automated builds.
Yeah, exact same lessons learned from automating our build process. You don't have to have everything working all at once. Just, you have a week to spend. How much can you do in a week? Doesn't have to be everything, but you will see benefits out of that work. For us, it was rather than searching out a lot of tools, because we didn't really have proof of concept of what we could do, we just went with Jenkins. One of our developers had worked with Hudson before and said, this will do most of what we're talking about wanting to do, which turned out really well, honestly. It was really easy to set up. It integrated with the build tools we were already working. And so we had a basic build spit out, I don't know, after about 3 days. It was, and that took, 20 minutes versus the 3 hours it would take a developer manually to do the build, verify everything, get it out, deploy it. Deployment, that ate up the rest of the week. We had enough environmental differences at different places that the simple solution didn't work. Then, that was originally on a JBoss server, and we've now changed to Wildfly, and it doesn't work anymore. So the next time I get a week, let's get automated deployment working again. Same thing for automating the tests as part of the build process. Spend a week on that. Still doesn't quite work, but that's okay, because now I know all the ways that it doesn't work. It's not wasted time. It's just that much faster next time when we get another week to get that to work.
Yeah, so where are we now? So as of, we had some downtime during the holidays, so I actually spent some time pretty much creating this library of functions so that we can actually start regression testing, or automated regression testing. So with this, creating this library, with the help of testers, they were able to help me put together this API so that testers that don't know how to code or do things like that can actually take functions and put it together, and they can start automating themselves, which has helped me in this whole process, because I can't code and write, a million scripts to go with it. So we kind of found our our thing that kind of works for us, and we're running our first set of regression tests actually today. They seem to be going really well, so we're enjoying this process, and we're still learning as we go along. So this is something that continually we're trying to improve, what works, what doesn't work, and we're kind of just pushing forward, and definitely like the way we're headed.
So going, you may know him. So going forward, we definitely want to continue leveraging automation for our NetDMR releases. And since we have another 6 years supporting this client, and We hope the system will still be in production by then and have even more users, so we envision more requests coming in, more feature requests. So our goal is to come up with an automated, continuous delivery pipeline all the way to production. So this would allow the client to get on-demand releases as they wish. So at a high level, it would really work where once the developer checks in their change, we build a code in an automated fashion. It goes to the dev server. We will have enough automated functional tests to cover 100% of the application. After that, it gets deployed to test server, where again, we'll have 100% coverage with automated tests. And on the test server, that's where we can have the test team also do really rigorous manual exploratory testing, which testers prefer doing that type of testing more than the repetitive testing. And then from there, pre-production and production. Pre-production would also have automated testing. So why would we want this pipeline? By having this pipeline, we'll be able to, as a team, spend a lot more time on system design, analysis, programming of features, programming of more complex features, programming of automated tests, and spend more time doing manual exploratory testing. This is these type of tasks. This is where we and the client want to be spending the money on. We don't want to be spending it on deployment checklists and those things that don't provide as much value. So this is a pretty big endeavor, and we're obviously going to approach it in small baby steps. And we would definitely love to hear from other teams who have experience trying to set up these types of pipelines. Thank you, and we're now open for questions or comments.
So I have a question. You may have touched on this, but about how long did it take you to go from literally no automation tests to kind of the point where I think you said you're at today, where you have a full regression test suite?
It took, we spent a week, and I think what we kind of did was we had like a spreadsheet of all our things covered in smoke tests, right? And what I did was I just kept chipping away. We had a filter with manual or automated, and so what I kept doing is anytime something was automated, I would just switch it to automated. And then initially we just kept going about it in that manner, and then after it took like a month or two, and then finally everything was automated, and then we had no need for any manual. So we kind of took it, like I said, baby steps at a time. We didn't just go in it thinking, oh, it's all or nothing. We kind of ran what we had, and then whatever we didn't have, the testers did a great job of picking up and kind of making it work.
Have you had to make any changes to the actual system architecture in order to make the system a little more, or I guess lend itself to automated testing, or have you identified any challenges that you currently have in your system architecture that you're going to need to change in order to embrace that future state that you're shooting towards?
So for the first part, I don't believe we've made any changes to the architecture to support automated testing. Your second question was, what are the challenges because of our architecture? The system is a monolith, so I think the new thing out there is having these decoupled architectures, so you can have more rapid deployment. I guess it would be easier to build automated tests from. So I'd say that just the size of the system, the security requirements involved with it, that's probably the biggest challenge for us embracing automation more.
how would you go about estimating, if you go on to another project, how long it would take to do what you did? Are there certain aspects of what you went through where you'd say, oh my gosh, these are just a very few set of business rules or capabilities, but they're super complicated? Or are there a lot of business rules, but they're really simple? Could you elaborate on what you learned through going through this process and how you could apply it, maybe if you were going to help out somebody else?
So, you want to actually take that?
You did the automation, friend.
Okay. So for the automation, yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, we kind of just went about it very slowly. It's we dedicated some time, in every sprint, got something working, and it was a lot about just taking really small steps, and then finally just being able to come together and put it all together. But no, it was very difficult. We learned a lot. Things worked, things didn't work. But yeah, no, we took very small steps. I don't know if that really answers it, but
one thing that we did was Koshal's initial step was we're not even to the point that 100% of our regression is automated. Right now, the first thing that was done for every project was the smoke test. The most crucial functions were automated. One that gives you the basis for the rest of your tests. And two, that gives you a sense of, for your system's complexity, how long does it take to automate your functions? And am I describing your process correctly?
Yeah.
So I guess identifying your most critical function and automating that first will give you a better sense.
And I think what we did was, this was our first go at regression testing, so we didn't worry about automating things like, so right now we're doing a lot of user management things, so we didn't worry about, oh, let's automate downloads. We just took it a section at a time, kind of wrote all the functions around that, incorporate all the business rules around that, and I think that's what we're going to continue doing as we move to other areas until hopefully we get that 100% coverage that we're shooting for. And once again, it's all small steps and then putting it all together at the end.
And we do have one question from the online is, do we have test automation training? And Tim Myers told me to say that yes. We are starting to offer in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, so I think those were really good points about analyzing the system for your risk. It's kind of taking the riskiest aspects out and investing a lot of your time and energy that you're going to put into automation around the riskiest parts. I just also wanted to comment, I've had a lot of success with test automation when it's been integrated throughout the team, not just with an isolated segment of the team. So a lot of times clients will try and bring automation kind of on top of an existing test group that may not have the skills or the time, given that they have other venues to do. So when you can kind of integrate the actual programming skill sets that you already have on the team with the knowledge and test domain that everyone else has, that's a much more successful integration that I've seen. And when test teams kind of get all the knowledge and do all the test automation and are responsible for integrating it with the pipeline and maintaining the test suite, and they're always going to kind of be behind if the developers aren't also a part of that process. So, good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.
And next up is Doug Jones to talk about After the Fire.
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good. All right. There's this button here that if you press it, it turns the screen black. I promise I will press it at least once. Maybe I should get it out of the way. All right. I'm Doug James. I'm from the Charleston Hub. I'm going to talk about power of adjourning and something that occurred to us over the summer. I'm a lead Scrum Master in Charleston Hub. I'm one of more than a dozen Scrum Masters on the VBMS project down in Charleston. Yay, Scrum Masters. All right. July 4th, we had a fire. The building caught on fire. Best I know is it was an electrical problem. So when we left Friday afternoon for our nice long weekend, this is kind of what it looked like. It was bright, open, sunny. Kind of idiosyncrasy, I don't know. A little unique. It's a wide open room. It's huge. But it was our building. We had mismatched furniture, homemade tables. Carpet was a little dirty from dogs. But it was ours. That was Monday afternoon. Where do you go? Where do you start? Monday afternoon, we were all like, oh my gosh, what happened? Where do we go? 300 plus people now have to sit somewhere to work. We had leased space across the street that had parking for like 20, 25 people. We've got customers. We had huge outpouring of support. Corporate headquarters called. Our customers called. Our largest customer, VA, called. Hey, everybody safe? Luckily, everybody was safe. Nobody was in the building. It was July 4th. And then they asked us, do you need to delay on your commitments? And we thought about that. But we decided we needed to move forward. We needed to continue to move forward as a group. So we wore out everybody's home internet access. My kids were complaining. The internet's slow, Dad. IM, chat, video. We had many stand-ups every day over video chat. But we also made a huge effort to get together in person. However, we didn't have anywhere to sit. So where do we go? These are, the big one up in this top, that's the actual building. We're spread all over the Charleston area. We started out, the usual places, coffee shops. But 10 people having a team meeting at Starbucks tends to draw a little bit of attention, especially when you're there 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So we started to get creative. Nick, one of the Scrum Masters, talked to his church. He arranged space for 3 teams in their church for the duration that we needed it. We had one team go to the local outlet center and sit in Wi-Fi at the food court room. Lunch, Wi-Fi, it was great. Somewhere there's a picture of this team sitting around having a team meeting, and smack dab in the middle is a woman who'd been shopping, and she was exhausted. She's just sitting there. It's a great picture. We had a couple of apartment complexes, particularly in Daniel Island, who said, you know what, just use our clubhouses. And so we had a constant rotation of teams going through there. We used the leased space as well. We had a rotation schedule set up so we could go and have some space there, big meetings, all that sort of stuff. But we continued to focus on delivering value for our customers. Not just the VA, all our customers, commercial, small, government customers. But with 25 teams, 30 teams, that's a lot we had to keep doing. But delivery was the focus, delivering value. So, that was our fire. Why am I standing here at Agile Day talking to you about the fire? Well, a couple of things. One, Charleston Hub started out as Spark LLC. When Spark LLC was founded, they founded on Agile as one of their tenets. So we were actually Agile from the beginning. So it wasn't a huge stretch for us to change tack, figure out how to collaborate over internet, over chat and things like that, because of that foundation and agility. But we also focused on delivering software. So the fire was July 4th. Early September, we delivered 2 releases, 2 different VBMS projects, 2 releases on time, early September, with everything we were supposed to. So we continued to deliver software. Matter of fact, one of our user acceptance testers arrived in Charleston in August for their 2-week trip to test the software, and they hadn't even known we'd suffered a fire. We just kept rolling. So, another note. This is Booz Allen. It's what we do. Right? They pay us to put out fires and fight fires. That's what our customers want. Right? Who puts out fires? Really? Yeah. Come on, raise your hand. Everybody puts out fires. It's what we do. The other notable item is adjourning. We held a wake. On Slack, what should we do? Somebody posted, hey, let's hold an Irish wake. So we did. Why not? We have a building. Everything in that building, nearly everything in that building was a loss. Very little was salvageable. Equipment, personal belongings, nothing really of significance came out of there. So one afternoon, it was drizzly, kind of rainy. We got together in tents, family, friends. We all got together. Of course we made speeches, because that's what you do at wakes. Some were somber. A couple were sad. But a lot of them were funny. It's Charleston Hub. Come on. So we ate. And our friends might have supplied... Okay, we had adult beverages. Of course we did. And we sang. John up here, one of our tech leads, VBMS, sat down, rewrote the song We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel. All of this is Charleston Hub related stuff. We've got, conference rooms up there. We've got all sorts of stuff. So we sang that. Had a great time. Like 4 stanzas of it or something. It was, anyway. And of course, we had to have a salute. So, what do you do at the Charleston Hub when you need to do a 21-gun salute? You use Nerf darts. Now, I'm not quite sure how we got a 21-gun salute with 12 people. I don't have a math degree, but I'm not sure it worked out that well. So maybe we had a little more than 21. All right. So why is our wake notable? What makes it important? Why to mention it? Claire talked about Tuckman's stages. There's actually a 5th stage that Tuckman and Jensen identified in '77. It's called adjourning. Some people call it mourning. Basically, it's the phase when a group or team, in this case, goes through and suffers some sort of conclusion. As you can see here on the screen, it's talking about disengagement from the relationships. So, why did we adjourn? Well, not sure it was really the building that we were adjourning, but it was more what was in the building, and not just the physical things. This photo here is actually the VBMS ratings team. This is the whole team. All 5 or 6 of them that were available got together. That's the whole project team getting together to do a family picture. You know, this is a close-knit team down there. We have made friends in Charleston. Heck, we have had a couple people get married after meeting in the Charleston hub. This is what we do. That's why we adjourned. Now, how is the adjournment related to Agile? It's not. Adjournment's not technically in any of the Agile literature or anything like that, but it affects teams. And Agile is about teams. Agile is a team sport. And that's where it comes together, is in the team. We are Agile team leaders. Our goal is to maximize those teams' efficiency. So how do you do that? When you have something like this, some conclusion comes up, you have an adjournment. So, moral of the story, long story short, or long story long, don't forget to take that final step. Have an adjournment. We had a huge conclusion. You know, our building was essentially ruined. 60%, I think somebody says 60% of the roof was gone. This is a metal roof. We're still not all the way back. It was announced yesterday, Monday the 27th. We'll all be back. So, if you have a big event, have a big adjournment. If you have a little event, have a little adjournment. But don't forget to have the adjournment. Celebrate. Learn if you've had failures. But inspect and adapt and have an adjournment. Thank you. You taking questions? Questions? Sorry, it's kind of a somber note. Sir?
Sorry, this isn't a question. It's just a comment from the token Irishman in the room. Kudos on the wake.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
There you go.
There you go.
So have you considered the idea of an adjournment ceremony as part of your normal delivery cycle?
Have we considered an independent or a regular scheduled adjournment because of the delivery cycle?
Yeah, or maybe some elements of that might be useful to improve team health.
Well, not until I started writing this presentation have I really thought about it. And as a matter, so I think it's something we might need to add, because we do have teammates change teams. We have teammates, we have attrition. It's where we live. But it's also a conclusion of, a release and things like that. So absolutely, I think that's something we need to consider. So, good question. All right. Yes, in the back.
So it's amazing that you guys have developed such a culture down there. What are some ways that other teams could incorporate similar things and make those connections with team members?
Some of the ways. That's a great question. Yeah, we could probably do a whole day on that one. Well, I'll tell you, I think one of the real powerful things in the Charleston Hub is its openness. I've talked to people who really don't like it or haven't liked it. Let me put it in the past tense. But being there, being open, being able to hear, being able to communicate, I don't want to put this negatively, so I'm trying to figure out, we are constantly together. And I don't mean that negative way. I mean, we run into each other in the, not just in the kitchen when we're getting coffee, but walking across the building to a meeting or something like that. I think that's one of the real powerful things. So I think, in all the Agile literature, they'll talk about team rooms and separating that. And those are important, but I think getting that big, wide open space really has helped. I think celebrating stuff is also a good idea. But, yeah, we could explore that one for a long time. Does that satisfy you a little bit? Get you started? Okay.
Was the beer light saved?
Was the beer light saved? I have to say, I never thought somebody would ask that while I was up here today. Yes, it was. Of course it was. I didn't say everything was gone. Come on.
Saving the light beer.
Yes. Yeah. So, good question. Thank you. Anyway. All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Charleston.